wrote this album because this is what we wanted to listen to. So before we released it or anything, both Michael and I were jamming out to this song for a couple months, and it was just like, when you enjoy listening to what you're putting out, I feel like there's a bigger and better connection to it.
You talked about some of the truths that you've learned growing up. What are some things that come to mind when you say that?
Well, I can always reference I want to be famous. Like, being in a band is tough because you want to be popular and you want people to notice you, and there's some like selfishness in that. But it's also like, it's part of being in a band. If you don't have anybody that pays attention to what you're doing, it's tough. But realizing the selfish parts of you, that those need to be pushed back, and realize that, whether you're doing music for a message or something like that needs to be the forefront of what you're doing, instead of it be for you or something that's, just a negative thing, instead of turning into something positive. So just realizing stuff like that, just being honest and saying, I think, I ask a lot of people on stage, like, who here's ever been selfish, and like half the people raise their hand and half of them are liars, but it's just being honest. It's being open, letting people see you for who you are, and realize that none of us are perfect, and if you can accept that and you can see that we're all struggling with stuff, it really opens up a way to talk to people and for people to listen to a message like that.
How do you guys come up with, I know you talked about the sound that you guys like, how do you guys come up with, what influences that sound? What are some things that you listen to? What are some things that you read that determines what you sing about?
Well, we don't really know how to read, so I'm kidding. But yeah, well, it's like we grew up listening to a lot of Christian music on like K-Love and Way FM and stuff like that. And then as we got older, we started moving on to alternative rock and indie rock and pop stuff that was on the radio, and we started learning that we liked some of the pop stuff, but then we still loved some of this rock and roll that we were getting into. And so a really cool mesh of that is kind of what we've stumbled upon and what we really enjoy playing. So like, one of my first, my favorite artists growing up was Stephen Curtis Chapman, and then eventually it was Coldplay in the more mainstream, and now it's stuff like Foster the People and Arcade Fire, and just there's a lot of good music out there, and we try to at least be influenced by anything that people are doing really well. It doesn't have to be Christian. It can be screamo. It can be whatever it is. Like, we appreciate good music.
Yeah, and that's what I said. Like, we basically took all the music that we loved listening to and tried to, they had ultimate influence over the songs we wrote and what we enjoy listening to, what we enjoy playing. So that just became our Futures album.
I was looking through your Facebook page preparing for you guys, and I saw that you made a very heartfelt post about some of the things that happened this week in Charlottesville and just how you emphasized love. Can you maybe go into that just a little bit?
Yeah, and that's social media these days. It's super easy to get super upset about stuff on social media, and obviously sometimes it's rightfully so. Like, I think it's important to call out things that you see that are negative, but there's a good way and a bad way to do that. I've seen so many stuff on Twitter and Facebook there where people are just trashing other people just because they think that they know who they are and what they believe. If you read the Bible, if you know how Jesus worked, he doesn't trash you. He says, "Hey, I get that you're messed up. I get that we have these problems. Like, let me listen to you, and here's what I have to say about it." And so it was just one of those things where I was getting really tired of seeing negative stuff, and I wanted to remind people that love is super, super powerful. It's got, it controls the world if we will allow it to. Hate is easy to do. It's easy to, want to punch a Nazi in the face. It might feel good, but that's not the way you change their heart. Absolutely, it's not going to ever work. They're going to be pushed further away from loving other cultures and other people if you do something like that. So that's just what it was about. It's just trying to love people. It doesn't mean you can't stand up and say, "Hey, I believe what you're saying is wrong," but it just means you should do it in a better way. I don't know.
You talked about punching people in the face. That's an amazing thing to talk about. What's a practical way? That's kind of the hate way to do it. What's a good way to love people?
Again, just listen to them. Like, to treat them like a human being. Like, you can spew hate, you can say negative things about that, but treat someone with some respect, even in that. Like, give them a chance. And it doesn't mean you're gonna let them convince other people, but just be kind to them in a way.
Yeah, I mean, we're Christians, so we use Jesus as an example. And Jesus spent time eating dinner with tax collectors and people that were just not good people. He never went to them and be like, hey, he wasn't like the Pharisees talking down to people. He sat with them. He told them truth. Truth is what we're all about. But he never like yelled at them. He did flip over some tables in the synagogue. And the righteous stuff like that is all right, I guess. But I don't know. There's this respect that when you listen to somebody and treat them like a human being, even if they're wrong, and then you tell them the truth, maybe they'll respect you enough to listen and maybe change something in their heart.